Who could be some surprise contributors for the Arizona State Sun Devils on the defensive side of the ball? We're going to talk about that on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils.
Are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Remember, we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, if you would like to check us out in a visual platform. But wherever you do get those podcasts, make sure that you turn on notifications by hitting the subscribe or the like button and making sure you never miss a new episode every time we drop one. Let's go ahead and hop into today's conversation. Yesterday, we had discussed three players who could be surprise contributors on the offensive side of the football. Today, we're going to be looking at the defensive side of the football. Once again, I've taken three different players from three different levels of the defense and am basically betting on these guys to outperform any of their current expectations that they might have. So, hopping right into the thick of it, this defensive line has a lot of names. Like a lot of guys that I anticipate will have big time roles this year. BJ Green is the leading sack artist from a year ago, returning this year with 5 sacks. Omar Norman-Lott is another guy who I anticipate to have a pretty big role. Stanley Lambert, I feel like, is someone who's kind of getting slept on as a redshirt senior and could find himself in a very important role on the outside there with Tyler Johnson and Jermaine Lole no longer being there. I am continuing to wanting to manifest a Trevez Moore breakout year, but that would require he plays more than 3 games. And unfortunately, it's just that's something you can't predict. That's not something that you can necessarily pin on one guy. So I'm not going to slander the inability of Trevez Moore to stay on the field, especially because when he's on the field, my goodness, I mean, the dude's a terror. So if he can find a way to stay on the field, I think he could be one of the best players on this defense in general, let alone the defensive line. But I am actually going to be looking at defensive tackle Michael Matus as the guy that I'm going to highlight here. Now, Matus is a guy who has slowly seen his production increase over his so far 3 years with the program. Last year, played a career best 10 games, recorded 5.5 tackles for loss, got a half sack and 28 tackles. Pretty productive, all things considered. Arizona State's defensive line has been a very fluid unit for a while now. There's definitely a lot of rotating pieces that have been going through. And Matus has been, sort of a beneficiary of that in that it's allowed him to really hone his craft and figure out who he wants to become. And I think that last year he showed off a lot of that potential. And now going into this year, sitting at 6'2", 265, he's a guy that can kind of flex throughout. But I would love to see him bulk up a little more and get kicked inside, not to like a nose tackle. That's a position for like a Nesta Jade Silvera or even a Robbie Harrison. Like I don't want Matus to be that gap eating guy, but I would love to see Matus become a guy who you can get creative with on the defensive line. You can put him in different alignments and allow him to attack and do what he does best. I think that there's a lot of potential this year for him to end up being one of the more focal points of this defensive line. Like I said, there's a lot of rotating this year. There's a lot of transition. Tyler Johnson is gone. Jermaine Lole is gone. DJ Davidson is gone. There were a lot of guys last year who were trying to figure out what their roles were going to be, and now they're going to be put into a season this year where they're going to have to figure out, how important is my playing time going to be in the sense of like, am I going to be on the field for 80% of the snaps? Am I only going to be a rotational guy? I'm thinking that Michael Matus is going to be one of the guys who could end up benefiting the most from this. I feel like Matus has the seniority that a lot of the other guys on this defensive line may not have. I understand that there's a lot of returning guys. Anthony Cooper is another guy pretty much built the exact same way, who had a little more playing time last year than him. Um, Recorded 30 tackles, 3.5 sacks for himself. I think that Anthony Cooper is also going to be a very important part of what Arizona State wants to do on the defensive line this year. But when I look at Michael Matus, I don't know. There's just something that sticks out about him that really intrigues me and really wants to see how much more there is to gain from him being able to be on the field a little bit more often. So he's going into his redshirt senior season, like we said. This is a year where he could finally just take everything, put it all together, and truly turn out what could be his best season. And Arizona State's going to need it. We got some guys that I feel confident in, like BJ Green, like Omar Norman Lott. Other than that, you need a lot of guys to really flourish and become dependable, every down, reliable guys. I feel like this is a situation that Michael Matus could really exploit and end up just I don't know. I really like Michael Matus this year though. And I think he's the guy on the defensive line that I'm highlighting here. Again, Anthony Cooper is another guy who really interests me. Stanley Lambert is also coming back, coming off a 2 sack season. He only played 2 games a year ago. He's definitely going to be more of a pure edge rusher compared to where I think Anthony Cooper and Michael Matus could be guys you can kind of rotate around the defensive line. It'll be very interesting. I feel like you're in a very similar situation where you're probably going to have a lot of rotating pieces, but I wouldn't be surprised if a couple guys besides like BJ Green, who we're all anticipating to have a really nice season this year. I think that Michael Matus could be someone who could be a really, really nice surprise for you this year. And that's kind of where I'm sitting at with him right now. We're going to go ahead and hop into our first break. When we return, we're going to go ahead and continue the discussion, moving to the next part of the defense and the surprise contributor that I have this year for the Sun Devils. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. This episode of the Locked On Sun Devils is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now nearly impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need for your car or vehicle. Why endure often pointless questions and sit while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer and choosing the only brand that their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more on the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years with prices reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find a solution to all your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. Hopping back into our conversation here. Looking at the next level of the defense, the linebackers. Now, this is a guy that we've been talking about for a little while. Going into this year, I had said Eric Gentry was the second best player on the Sun Devils. This was prior to him transferring to USC. Gentry was such a great player for you last year, essentially as your fourth linebacker, because ahead of him were Kyle Soelle, Merlin Robertson, and Darian Butler. Butler is gone now, but Robertson and Soelle remain. Gentry is gone. So who's going to step up as that third linebacker? We thought maybe Rodney Gross could have found his way into the lineup before he decided to transfer a few months after transferring. So it's it's a wide open spot right now for somebody to come up and grab. But I'm going to go ahead and go with a familiar name, Connor Sully. Now, Connor Sully is someone who I feel might be better than his brother, and his brother obviously being Kyle Sully. Now, Kyle Sully actually paced the Sun Devils in tackles a year ago, recording 88. This ended up being a career best for him after not seeing any higher than 26 of that. Kyle was like maddening to me. I don't know. There were some plays where it felt like Kyle Sully was like a godsend on the field, and then there were other plays where I was just pulling my hair out of my head, and it was frustrating trying to figure out what the heck was going on the field. I feel like Connor is the better parts of what Kyle Sully is. He's not as big as his brother. Kyle is 6'4", Connor at 6'2". They're not overly different builds though in terms of like their actual mass, and I feel like Connor moves better. I feel like Connor might be like a better athlete than his brother, and this is a golden opportunity for him to really get onto the field this year and finally start to make a larger impact. So last year, as the team's fifth linebacker, he recorded 16 tackles, one for a loss. That was it. No other outstanding statistics on the box score to really take note of and write home about. But it felt like when he was on the field, there was like this little electricity that got you excited and thinking that maybe a big play was inbound. I think that Connor Sully could definitely take that step forward this year. I think there's a lot of familiarity here too. He's been with the program since 2019. So there's a lot of potential behind the scenes and from what we've gotten small glimpses of to have me thinking that he could possibly be a very good linebacker for the team this year. Arizona State really values three core guys at the linebacker position. They need that third guy right now. And with the uncertainty that's going on in the secondary and the rotation on the defensive line, there's going to be a lot of onus on Merlin Robertson and for Kyle Sully to have their absolute best seasons and play out of their minds. That leaves a really, really good opportunity for a guy next to them to seize this chance here and all these opportunities, right? To come in, be a starter, and potentially absorb all of the snaps that are going to be available. I don't know if Arizona State is still going to want to run a lot of three linebackers this year, but if they do, Connor Sully has the inside track for it. To me, there's no one else who's really even going to be competing with him that I can really think of. There's just the only thing that would really be standing in his way is if Arizona State did a lot of 5 or 6 defensive back sets, which I don't know if I would totally put it past them. But at the same time, that's a secondary that doesn't have a lot of familiarity to it. And that would be a very dangerous situation to put that secondary in. You have two guys for sure. I think that you might just have a third guy here with Connor Sully. I'm definitely betting on Connor Sully to really step up this year and become a very dependable linebacker for the team. He might even show out and be the best linebacker. That'll all depend on if Merlin Robertson can find a way to get back to that potential we saw all those years ago, or if Kyle Sully can take a step forward from what was a good 2021 season. But I'm definitely betting on Connor Sully to be a really, really nice surprise for the Sun Devils this year and potentially somebody who can absolutely outperform any expectations if he has any right now. I think that's the other thing is I don't know if anyone's talking about Connor Sully. Well, I'm going to go ahead. and start talking about Connor Soelle and tell you that my expectations are going to be a little higher for him than others. We're going to go ahead and hop into our final break now. When we return, I got one more guy to talk about for you guys who could outperform expectations for the 2022 season on the defensive side of the ball. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably had the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? They are now giving it the Puffs treatment. That's right. Coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor you love and deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. But stop drooling and listen. They're good for you. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. Coconut brownie chunk puffs are only here for a limited time. Go to built.com now to make sure you don't miss out. They're going fast because they taste amazing. All Built Puffs are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. The best part about Built Puffs is, of course, they taste amazing, but you can enjoy them guilt-free because they're actually good for you. They're the perfect treat, perfect for when you got a craving, you need to satisfy your sweet tooth, or if you need a quick, healthy snack, they're an excellent source of protein. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing, get to built.com and order your box of coconut brownie chunk Built Puffs right now. Go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. And you guys got to make sure that you are staying tuned to the Locked On Pac-12 podcast hosted by Spencer McLaughlin and stopping by our local experts on the Locked On Podcast Network to take you across the Pac-12 in 30 minutes or less. Make the Locked On Pac-12 your second listen of the day. Looking at the final guy here, there is next to no certainty in this secondary. I love Jordan Clark. He is the one guy who I feel incredibly confident about who was here previously. He's coming back. The guy everyone knows I love, Khoury Bethley, is brand new this year coming from Hawaii. Now, my expectations for Bethley are pretty high. I think he's going to be a guy who's a transcendent player on the secondary. I think he's a turnover machine. I think he knows how to fly to the football. Across from him is Chris Edmonds. Chris Edmonds has gotten like zero love. I think that this is going to end up being a player that we regret not giving enough attention to. Edmonds played his last 3 seasons with the Samford Bulldogs down in Alabama. In that time, he recorded 8 picks in 3 years. They don't have the tackle numbers, so I couldn't tell you if this is a 100 tackle guy or if this is a 50 tackle guy. But regardless, this is a playmaker. He finds his way to the ball. He's a big body too, 6'2", 214 pounds, and he's stepping into a secondary that is looking to replace a lot of production. I mean, even besides the corner standpoint, Evan Fields is gone from the secondary. Fields had been with the program for it felt like a decade. He was since Evan Fields had been there for a long time. DeAndre Pierce had been an player the last year and a half, 2 years or so after transferring from Boise. Overall, there was a lot of defensive back talent that is no longer with the team and could stand to use an upgrade. And I think that Edmonds could provide that for you. He's definitely like a bully kind of guy, I think. And I feel like he's also someone who's going to be a lot different than what you've had in that secondary in recent years. And Evan Fields and DeAndre Pierce, both guys who were not the biggest in the world. DeAndre's 5'11", Evan Fields 6'1", just over 200 pounds. Edmonds playing at 6'2", 214. I mean, this is a big bully bruiser kind of guy. If he can prove to be a tone-setting hitter as well, that would be a huge boon for the secondary. There's potentially some big-time playmakers in the secondary. If Khoury Bethley is everything that we think he is, then you've got a true free safety. You've got a rangy guy and someone who can play all over the field. He's definitely that hybrid kind of guy. With Edmonds, you might have a second guy. I'm not willing to say he's primarily a box safety and you have to play him near the line of scrimmage because, history says you have to script two safeties to be that way. Just because Bethley is closer to a deep safety doesn't mean that Edmonds suddenly needs to be near the line of scrimmage. Based off of his ability to make plays on the ball, you might have two guys that you can flex all over the field and reap the benefits with it because of the ability to put these guys in different situations and allow them to attack the football and make plays with it. You don't walk into 8 interceptions. That's a lot of interceptions. That's a really, really good amount of interceptions. And for what it's worth, he turns it into plays as well. On those 8 interceptions, he's returned it 115 yards and took one of them to the house. There's playmaking skills when the ball is in Chris Edmonds' hands. I wouldn't be surprised, if this ends up being one of the more reliable full-time starters in the secondary. I feel like it's Khoury Bethley, Jordan Clark, and then it's up for anybody else to grab. I want to see the Markham brothers both really step into big-time roles for the team. I think that Chris Edmonds is going to be someone who surprises a lot of people. We're not talking about him enough. I think we need to start generating more conversation his way. He definitely has the abilities that you're looking for in a playmaking safety. He's not this compact guy who's incapable of being all over the field. He's not Derwin James. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's that kind of safety, but I think he's a guy who can be a lot more versatile for you than you might be realizing because you look at the body type. And unfortunately, you don't have a lot of frame of work to work with. And Samford wasn't exactly playing Alabama every year. They were playing Florida this year, but neither here nor there. Overall, though, I think that Chris Edmonds is definitely going to be someone who ends up surprising a lot of Sun Devils fans in a very, very good way. I think the potential of him and Khoury Bethley at the safety position could be one of the better duos that the Sun Devils have had in quite some time. I really like the potential of these two. I think that Khoury Bethley is going to be a monster, and I would not be surprised if Chris Edmonds was not that far behind him. But that is going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. So again, thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Remember, we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, if you'd like to check us out in a visual platform. But wherever you do get those podcasts, make sure that you turn on notifications and hit that subscribe button so that you get an update whenever we post a new episode. If you're on Twitter, go ahead and follow me at Richie Bradshaw36 and follow the podcast while you're there as well at LO_Sun Devils. But that'll do it for us here at the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. So until next time, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.